Apple, one of the most celebrated tech companies in the world, known for selling hundreds of iPhones and MacBooks every year. But how did they get so far? And what's next? All that and more in today's video. It all started in the mid-1947 when Steve Jobs returned from a 7-month trip from India. As soon as he arrived, he met with a friend named Steve Wozniak. There, Steve Wozniak pitched Steve Jobs about a revolutionary idea that he had come up with, a new computer, though it was rejected. After hearing this, though, Steve Jobs proposed that they would create their own company from ground up. And so, the duo got started on their business. At the same time, a man named Ronald Wayne also joined the duo, but instantly left within 12 days, selling his shares for $800. April 1st, 1976, California, the day Apple started in Steve Jobs' garage, which is now kind of a historical site. There, they sold Apple without a monitor. This was out in 1977. Anyway, the Apple One sold locally and wasn't any profit for Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. So Steve Jobs went to a shop named the Byte Shop and convinced them to take 50 orders. Though Apple had a problem. Where would Apple get the parts? So they called up a supplement company and said they would pay later after all the orders were sold. And it worked. After, the owner gave them $666.66, though they were still not in any profit. Soon enough, Steve Jobs was nearly about to give up the company and stop. But just then, Wozniak came up with the Apple II, which sold without a monitor, as well as that it could be separated. Suddenly, their business skyrocketed. Companies agreed to them, and they got their own production group. Seeing this, of course, Apple began the next computer, the Apple III, without Wozniak this time, though it went really bad. And if not for its previous success, they would have shut down there instantly, though things were just getting started for Apple. By now, Steve Jobs knew that Apple was the next big thing, so he created the computer Lisa with an amazing graphic interface. Though, it wasn't much of a victory for Apple since its software wasn't good anyway. So, Steve Jobs hired a new CEO, John Sculley, also being founder of Pepsi. Soon after that, they launched the Macintosh. It was said to be a computer that anyone can use, including non-DOS users. DOS meaning a disk operating system that used disks instead of memory. But there was a lot more bad news since after John Sculley joined, Steve Wozniak resigned, saying his interest had diminished, mainly being as he wasn't designing anything new. But things didn't stop there, as John Sculley and Steve Jobs had a power conflict, though Steve Jobs was the one who ended up being fired. Though Steve Jobs didn't give up just there. Instead, he bought the company Next, an operating system company, and the renowned animation company Pixar. After this whole hustle, Apple released more variants of the Macintosh, such as the Macintosh 2 or the Macintosh LC, standing for low cost. It's dumb. Though this wasn't much of a help, as IBM and other Windows operating system computers were on the rise and competing with Apple on each and every step. Seeing this competition, Apple decided to change their trajectory and began creating portable computers, or laptops, of course. So, on September 20th, 1989, they released the Macintosh Portable, which ended pretty bad. But Apple knew they couldn't change the trajectory or turn back anymore. So they created their first ever PowerBook in 1991, the PowerBook 100. And it was actually kind of good. But even with this, IBM was a threat. And overproduction led to near bankruptcy. So Apple was forced to buy Next Studio. With that, bringing back Steve Jobs to Apple. And soon enough, Steve Jobs became the CEO as well. And with it came groundbreaking new ideas. The next year came the iMac, which is much more modern than the previous models and is just better. It's more modern, right? But things were just getting started. By now, Apple was quite renowned in the tech world, but Steve Jobs was striving for even better. With that, he created the iBook in July 21st, 1999. It was one of the most modern computers at the time and just looked way better and more iconic. But Jobs was just getting started since in October 23rd, 2001, Apple released their iPods along with their iTunes. This changed the music industry as a whole. It was kind of like the normal AirPods of today, but instead of using your phone to do the song, you use the iPod, the device they give you on the iPod actually. But then, in 2006, Apple released the first ever MacBook, which was even better than both the PowerBook and the iBook, and almost looks kind of similar to today's MacBooks. But then came Steve Jobs' greatest, the iPhone. It's considered one of his greatest speeches and was one of the first to introduce touchscreens to the phone market, mainly the smartphone market. Then, in 2010, Apple made its final boom during Steve Jobs' reign, the iPad. It was almost the same as their iPhone, just bigger, which made it way easier to do work on it and was a good alternative for both the iPhone and their MacBooks. But then it happened. On October 5th, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away due to a pancreatic cancer. And that was the tail end of one of the most iconic tech-centered celebrities. But not the tail end for Apple. For you see, a new CEO was on the rise to take the Apple to the next level. And the person is, you probably know, it's Tim Cook, yeah. But more on him in the next video, of course, since this video's kinda a bit too big for this channel standard, of course. This video's over, I guess, so touche. See you in the next video, and bye.